G'day.
Hi, Danny.
How's it, Aaron? How'd your correspondence go with that shit?
Danny, such language. No, I gave up because I agree. He's a deadhead. He just changed. I cannot believe people like that are in public office. But then I think, who would want to get anyone with him? Just terrible.
Yep. Okay.
I think my attitude is a function of my age.
Yep.
I'm becoming a cranky old bugger.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. Don't know where the others are.
Well, I noticed Jeff Hurst has just pulled out.
Yep.
We'll wait till we get logged in, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh. G'day, Darren.
I'm just supervising a whole lot of young 11-year-olds watching a movie for Ariela's birthday, so I'm just going to be on silent.
Okay. Oh.
Good evening. Erev Tov.
Erev Tov.
Happy Anzac Day. Am I allowed to say that, or it's a sad Anzac Day? I'm not quite sure. I'm still getting the culture.
It's, we acknowledge.
Acknowledge. Meaningful Anzac Day, right?
Yeah.
You're more ill, as they would say.
Right.
Good evening. Okay, so sorry, yeah, that's just the Hester boys. You can just move it down the table. That's good. Okay. I believe that we still have a little bit left of the chapter on davening on one's own. We're talking about COVID minyanim and then davening on one's own. So I believe we're on page 98 in book 10. For those blimey, how big is this? You want me to go through this year? So let me just, well, I believe we're on page 98. And I will share screen for those. Page 98, you bookmarked it. There we go. Excellent. Just let me just okay, we discussed last time. I mean, we discussed the result really left. We were davening on one's own in the house. That's what we finished discussing last time. I'll just share screen. And last time we ended off with davening in front of a mirror. And the Mishnah Berurah had asked davening in front of a mirror for one of two reasons. Because it looks like you're bound down to your image. And also a kavanah related issue, that it's a distraction. One of the reasons in a shiva house, there are different reasons given, but one of the reasons in the shiva house that the minhag is to take down the mirrors is because you daven the real, I mean, there are different reasons, mystical reasons, but the real reason, like the primary reason, don't always say real reason. The primary reason is because if you're davening in a shiva house, then you know, tefillahs are there. You don't want people to be looking at their reflection when they're davening to Hashem. So therefore, Rav Ovadia rules that there's room on Shabbos that you can uncover the mirrors. Because on Shabbos, Ashkenazim at least, we don't daven in the shiva house, we go shul. So on Shabbos, there's no reason to have the mirrors covered, Rav Ovadia suggests. Rav Soloveitchik has a whole lomdus regarding why we cover the mirrors up in a shiva house. This is related to this, but it's about mirrors, so I'll talk about it. He talks about the idea of Soloveitchik that he calls it it's a sign of the bittul tselem elokim. That when a person dies, a man is tselem elokim, man is in the image of God. So that person has died. So in some sense, the image of God is left. And that's the idea. He thinks that the covering the mirrors in some sense is like acknowledging the loss of tselem elokim in the world through the parting. That's why in Brisker houses, at least from Salvation houses, they don't, not only do they cover up the mirrors, but they don't, on a typical, often a pastime at a shiva is looking at old family photos, not in the Soloveitchik households. They don't look at they cover the photos as well.
Only photos of deceased.
I'm not sure if they cover all the photos. I can't remember. Or they Photoshop. I don't think they've Photoshop them out, but they take down the pictures as well. Because they see it as a kiyum in the acknowledging the loss of tzelem elokim.
But is that a long-term thing though, or just during shiva?
No, just during shiva.
Okay. Rambam would have a problem with that.
So Rambam might have a problem with it, but that was just an idea about that. So we're now on page 98, and we're discussing other properties about davening in the home, whether one's in ISO or lockdown or whatever it is, or one's unwell. And the other interesting one, now this is obviously a point of contention, which is, you are sitting in my seat, right? The old classic, the idea of sitting in a fixed place, which we know exists when a person sits in a shul. Right, if we look in Surah 60, the Shulchan Aruch rules, a person should establish a fixed seat, and they shouldn't change it unnecessarily. So there is the inyan to have a fixed place for sitting for davening. Piskei Tshuvot extends this even to somebody who's davening at home. So if somebody's unwell or somebody has to daven at home or can't make it to minyan, they should have a fixed place in the home where they daven as well. So that's what the Piskei Tshuvot extends it to here. Sorry?
That's got to be a bit of a stretch.
A bit of a stretch. Why is it a stretch?
Because I could, there are occasions when I specifically Shabbos I want to daven in the lounge room. During the week I'll daven in my office. On those occasions if I'm not at shul. I just think that's I don't know. It's a little bit machmir.
It's a bit machmir for you, Danny. Okay. But let's see what he says
I
inside.
think it's a bit rigid. That's right. Okay, fine.
Okay, let's see what he says inside. We'll see it nonetheless. In
What
61,
number?
61, page 98, source 61, the Piskei Teshuvah.
Yes.
V'yesh lizkor. One should remember, shagam im machmat ones mitpalel b'veito. If a person's forced to daven in one's home, yikba lo makom meyuchad shesham mitpalel. A person should have a fixed place where they daven. Av shedavar koreh leitim rechokot. Even if a person doesn't do so regularly, even if a person doesn't regularly daven at home, still they should have a place where they daven. Why? V'gadol scharo shel hakoveh makom letfilato. Great is the reward if somebody has a fixed place for davening. Kedisa b'Gemara, right? Quotes the Gemara beginning brachot. Shenikra chasid v'anav mitalmidav shel Avraham Avinu. It was counted among the as a pious person, an anav, a humble person among these disciples of Avraham. Shekava makom letfilato, like Avraham Avinu himself fixed a place for tefillah. Kedichtiv, as it says, Vayashkem Avraham, right? B'boker, it says, what does he do? He went el hamakom asher amad sham, to the place where he stood. Right. So what did Chazal say? What does it mean amad sham? Place where he stood, place where he always stood. In other words, Avraham had a fixed place where he went to daven to Hashem. So what's the reason for doing this? So Uvatam Hadavar, regarding the reason of the matter, Katama Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch wrote, Shetfilah doma lekorban. Because we know tefillah is obviously similar to an offering, korban. Shekol achad kavua makomo shchitato matan damo. Korbanot, right? In the Mikdash had fixed places. Each korban had a specific place, and a specific place it was slaughtered, and where the blood was applied on the mizbeach. And the place where one davens, a specific location, koneh kedusha. Literally, a person, it acquires holiness, that place. We know this has halachic ramifications, right? If you have a fixed minyan somewhere, like a shul, it has kedusha. Ukshem mitpalel, over the page, be'oto makom shuv, and when a person davens there again, kedushat hamakom misayat lo shetibav tfilato, the holiness of the place assists that his tefillot should be accepted. But Roshem HaKedusha tofeset b'koma v'nisharet sham la'olam. But this is like in terms of machshava, in terms philosophically, but also halachically, we know that there's makom kavur for tefillah. It has halachic significance. V'gam shinoi makom yisobev tirda la'adam l'chol mara'id nav, and also changing from place for technical reasons distracts the person. Asher yireh mechadash, right? Every time he looks at something new, v'ufra kavanat tefillah. So now he gives a technical reason at the end, which is a kavana-based reason. But if you don't have a fixed quiet corner where you always daven, that's going to affect your kavanah. But nonetheless, he does talk about the idea of even in the home having a set place where one davens, whether it's for the idea of tefillah and the idea of kedusha of tefillah, or for technical reasons of kavanah, having a set place where you're not distracted. He says that such a thing is recommended, is important.
Can I just ask you, is this a law or is this a suggestion?
Well, the Shulchan Aruch writes it, if you want to look at his words of 62, is when a person does, or not 62, sorry, where am I? I went a page ahead.
62.
Which source was it? No, it was 60. Yeah, 60. Yikba makom, a person should fix a place. Yikba. It doesn't say chayav likba, it says yikba, he should. But that's in general. And the Rabbi Levitz in the Piskei Teshuvah, he extends it to saying that, it also applies to the home. He doesn't say you have to. He says that it's preferable.
You see, to me, it makes sense to do it in the same place. But there are times, like Danny says, you feel like moving to a different place. I'm not sure that, I'm glad it says you should, not you must. But anyway, that's my contribution.
Okay. All right. Okay. But I think at the end of the day, the primary thing is perhaps the second reason, which is the idea of distractions. In general, that it's interesting that Gemara in Brachot, in Dafchet, and other and also Gemara Megillah as well, talk about the idea of Tefillah and Talmud Torah being in the same place. The Gemara brings a story in Brachot, Dafchet, and also Megillah about davening in the place where one learns. Bein amudei hechad ha'avaris. So it's literally between the pillars where one learns. And that's the idea of that of Talmud Torah and Tefillah as being parallel modes of Avodat Hashem. You've got Talmud and you've got Tefillah, and the two of them together are modes of Avodat Hashem.
The kitchen table. is
Sorry?
also the
So if the kitchen
where you
table
eat.
is where you daven and it's where you do daf yomi, then that's the most. It's good that they're together.
You're having the meal and saying brachot. The benching for it is in place of sacrifices. So it's part of your avodah.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's taking it a little bit far, but yeah, there's definitely this idea of set places, Filah and Talmud, and the two go together. What about distractions in general? So we know there are halachot, even if one's davening at home, the one's not allowed to be distracted. And some of these halachot would apply whether at shul or at home. And what's one such example we've seen previously when it came to tefillin is a person shouldn't be holding things when one is davening, especially when one's doing Amidah. We look in source 62, the Shulchan Aruch says, in source 62, when a person is davening, lo ye'echoz biyado tefillin, you shouldn't hold tefillin in your hand. It doesn't mean wear it, it means you shouldn't be holding tefillin. Why? Because tefillin are expensive and they're dear, and you're scared you're going to drop them, and you're not going to concentrate because you're going to be worried about dropping the tefillin. V'lo sefer mikitve HaKodesh, right? Nor one of the books of Tanakh. V'lo ka'ara mele'ah, you shouldn't be holding a full bowl. V'lo sakinu ma'ot, nor a knife. Ma'ot money, v'kikar, right? Bread. Mipnei shelibo alehem, person's concentrating on them. Shelo yiplu, so they shouldn't fall. V'tered v'zit batel kavanato, and then it has to be bothered and will not have proper kavana. And a tinok is not mentioned there, but it's a problem. Really, yeah, holding a child is the chora would seem to be the same. So it's not ideal to hold a child when one's davening. Certainly, when davening Amidah, it's not ideal. He allows lulav here. There are those who have the minhag, the Gemara taught in the Gemara in Sukkah talks about the Anshe Yerushalayim who would hold their lulav all day. So it brings here lulav bismano mutar le'achos biyado. So somebody's allowed to hold lulav while davening in their hands. Kivan sha'achiza biyado hi mitzvah. Since it's a mitzvah to hold it, einon itrad bishvilo. He's not distracted. It's just supposed to be something which is just part and parcel of the tefillah rather than additional distraction. So there are those who do have the minhag to hold the lulav the whole way through. They don't put it down after halal or shanot, but they continue holding it all the way through musaf as well. That's the minhag that the Gemara brings in the Anshe Yerushalayim. The people of Jerusalem would hold their lulav all day. So I held my lulav during my oldest son's Brit. So I kept it. And that's a good lumdus there. But yeah.
But the bris was during Sukkot, was it?
Well, yes, it wasn't during Pesach. Yeah.
Well, I just thought I'd
yes. My oldest son was born on Yud Bet Tishrei, so the Brit was Chol Hamoed Sukkot. Yeah, it wasn't just for the And there's great lamdas there. Tosfot in Sukkah talk about the idea of lulav being a korban and going up, and there's a good lamdas that I gave.
But the timing of your son's birth is not as relevant as the day the miller was wrong.
In regards to the lulav, that would be correct.
Correct.
Yes.
I just want to say, I do have a recollection with my father davened at home. He always davened in the same place.
There you go.
Yeah. Now I remember. Yeah.
Was the Brit in the Sukkah?
The Brit was not in the Sukkah. The Brit was in the shul in Ma'ale Adumim, where my in-laws live. Extra halachic questions about the mohel or whoever did the kriyat shem. Could they drink from the wine because it wasn't in a sukkah? Should they have given it to someone else to drink?
Why wasn't it in the sukkah? I think that was a good question of Jeff's.
There wasn't. It was Peter Ween.
Oh, then I'll withdraw it.
Okay. Still a good question. Pretend it was Jeff's.
Why wasn't it in the
Why
sukkah?
wasn't it? Because it was in the shul immediately after Shachrit and stuff.
The shul is where you always have it.
Sorry, the shul is where you have the Brit.
That's what you normally do. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Eliyahu didn't want to come to the sukkah. He came to the Brits.
Okay.
The shul.
Probably there wasn't a glass of wine for him. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Someone else in Alon Shvut had a Brit on Sukkot, and Rav Lichtenstein who did the Kriyat Shem, and he refused to drink it, and he gave it to the mother of because women are patur from Sukkot, so he gave it to the mother to drink. But yeah, they're not everyone agrees to that. But yeah.
The mother was in the room.
For the Brit, yeah.
But seriously, after davening, why couldn't you go straight outside and do the bris in the sukkah? That's what I want to understand.
Well, this was before the times of COVID, where we thought that, Britot, it's usually best to do these things indoors. We learned our lesson. My second son's Brit was outdoors with masks and 20 people. So yes.
But you only do a then you only do in the sukkah things that you do at home. The sukkah is your place where you live. And you
Typically,
don't
right, exactly. Typically, I wouldn't have done the Brit.
at home.
And if it wouldn't have been Sukkot, I wouldn't have done the Brit in the house. I would have done it in the shul. Same way that you don't move davening from the shul into the Sukkah.
Yeah, that's why
So we also didn't move the Brit.
The minhag is going to go
So,
out to the sukkah
Right.
to take the lulav.
That's why like in non-Hasidic
Yeah,
circles,
why
we
do
don't
that?
shake the love in the Sukkah. We do it in shul.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, the whole point is you make your home in the Sukkah your home. You don't make the Sukkah your shul. You make the Sukkah your home. And the Brit is typically not done at home. Had we done it at home, we probably would have done the Sukkah. It wasn't. My second son's Brit was in COVID under the under the stars. So
Under the Southern Cross.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay.
All
right.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on. Okay, next halacha. So we know that there's this issue in general of eating before mincha and mariv, right? So usually we have ways out of it, and because you've got a fixed time to daven. What about if I'm in ISO or I'm unwell? I'm not making it to shul. I don't have a fixed time to daven. Is there an issue to eat before mincha and mariv? So let's first see in general the minhag. If we look in source 63 on page 100, which is the Ramah, Shulchan Aruch Ramah bring a whole array of opinions as to how much or little one can eat before, or a fixed meal one could have before mincha or mariv. And the Ramah brings in source 63, but below le'achol, one should not eat before mincha. V'nahagu lahakel kishtei hasfarot. The minhag is to be lenient by both opinions. Dahainu, namely, b'seuda gadola samach lemincha gadola. That you can have a large meal close to mincha gadola. Mincha gadola is half an hour after chatzot hayom, after midday. V'seuda katana samach lemincha katana. And one is allowed to have a small meal close to mincha katana, which is 2.5 hours before shkir. So machlokes between the Gra and Magen Avraham, if it's before shkir, before tzeis, we typically say before shkir. The efshar hatam, the reason is mishum da'achshav, because nowadays, or at least in the times of the Ramah, korin lebeit hakneset. They used to be the town crier who would call everyone to come to shul. Therefore, lo chashina, we're not concerned. Dilma yivshav lo yipalel, a person will be negligent and misdavening. So the Ramah says that they tend to be lenient and allow even a small meal before mincha time. And perhaps the reason we're making, he says, it's because there was someone who used to call people for sure. He used to, not the Vekar, or whoever would come through the town and say mincha. Right? The Muazzin, thank you for that. So the question, thank you.
Shalom.
Yes. So great.
We got some very irreverent people.
Yeah. So the question is, what do we do nowadays that we don't have the Muazzin? So the Aruch HaShulchan already in his times that was not the place to do this, but still there might be still room to be lenient. So let's see what the Aruch HaShulchan says in 64 regarding this. He says, Aval, in truth, in truth, haheter hazeh, this leniency, lo shayach ata b'rov hamakomot, is no longer relevant in most places. This leniency that you can eat a small meal before without concern you're going to forget davening. Why? She'ein korin lebeit hakneset b'mincha, because we don't have the muazzin nowadays. So no one calls us to mincha in our towns. The yesh amru heter acher. So the Aruch HaShulchan says some people suggest a different reason to be lenient. Al mashe anu ochlin achar zman mincha katana. The fact that we do happen to have dinner early. Same reason which is allowed earlier, allowing somebody to learn Torah before Shacharit. The imitz palel b'yechidut asur limod. That's only if one davens in private, it's forbidden to learn before davening, before Shacharit. Why? Lest he comes to lengthen his learning and misses the time for davening. So he brings the other more famous svara. A person who's regularly davens in shul has a fixed minyan they always go to, mutar. That would be allowed. Somebody has a fixed minyan they always go to can learn before davening. So too here, Kenhu, the same thing is true, says the Aruch HaShulchan. that which they prohibited to eat and all these other things before davening, zehu b'mitpalel mincha b'yichidut. That's somebody who davens on their own. Ava b'mitpalel b'minyan, somebody who davens in a fixed minyan. Halok she'itasef haminyan be'echrech shelo yishtakach להתפלל. Certainly, he's going to go to shul. His habit, he always goes to shul at this time. He's not going to forget to daven because he's going to shul. B'vadai svara gedola, that's a great reason. It's good svara. And therefore, מי שאינו מתפלל מנחה בציבור, ודאי מחויב להתפלל מנחה קודם אכילתו, בזמן סמוך למנחה קטלה. So someone who doesn't actually daven with a minyan certainly should daven before they eat. How much more so if after this time you have to daven before you eat? So if somebody's davening on their own, what does he say? He says that they have to eat. He says that, sorry, they have to daven before they eat. But if you have a fixed minyan, and this is the general heter, then it's allowed. But so if you're in ISO and you don't have a fixed minyan, then you're not allowed to eat before you daven. If it comes to mincha, certainly mincha katana time, then you need to daven mincha before you fix the meal.
Rabbi, Darren Katz here. Hey, firstly, thank you very much for early today. It was very nice. The two questions. First question is, I thought there was some sort of issue with davening when you're very hungry, not during Yom Kippur, but in general. So trying to avoid that. I don't know if that's just an urban myth.
I'm not sure about
myth.
hungry. Certainly intoxicated or in a bad mood, and all the halachot of fifth parak of Masechet Brachot and en omdim. There are certain ways that you're not supposed to daven before Hashem.
I can tell you, if I'm hungry, I'm in a bad mood. Do that much.
Right.
Anyway,
so maybe we can discuss that. Yeah.
and the second one is when they talked about, if I understood that source correctly, they're saying that if you learn Torah, you can eat. Or what was? No, I'm just trying to work out.
No, it wasn't discussing eating. It was extrapolating from the fact that you're allowed to learn Torah before Shacharit if you have a fixed minyan, because you're not going to miss it.
Okay.
So too, you should be allowed to eat before mincha if you have a fixed minyan that you go to.
But this is only for mincha and mariv. It's not for Shacharit.
Mincha and mariv, right? Correct. Well, Shacharit has different issues, which is the question of whether you're allowed to eat before Shacharit, which we're not discussing now.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So they quote here of Moshe David Leibowitz from the Kafke, I think. Kashrut is also an author in America, and he writes as follows in source 65. There are many places in halacha where we have the concept of shomer. Okay, this is the question of a shomer. Who could be a shomer to remind you to daven? Someone to watch and make sure one davens. Some poskim say that if one has a shomer who will remind him to daven, then he may eat a small meal even within half an hour of mincha katana. For example, if one's wife is eating with him, she will remind him to daven, then he may eat. Okay, so he says a shomer might work. The poskim discuss whether setting an alarm clock would serve the same purpose as a shomer to remind someone to stop eating or refrain from doing other activities when the time mincha katana arrives. It seems that this suffices only if one has a tendency to act once the alarm goes off and not snooze it. So that's great, right? It's great. So the question, so there are those who allow a shomer. So can an alarm, if I set an alarm, does that halachically count as a shomer? So if I have my, you're not just your Spira Omer alarm clock or whatever it is, but you have a reminder, does that work? And he says, well, it depends on your tendencies are. Do you snooze, or are you one of those snoozers and roll back over, or are you one of those people who actually does it? Right. So I will add just in Yaneda Yoma regarding to today, which is not discussed here, and that is the question of Sfirat HaOmer as well. So Sfirat HaOmer, same halacha are brought down. You're not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to, before your malach, whatever it is, before Sfira. So you don't miscount in Sfira. So Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva. And he says, great, it's what we rely on, which is that the same leniencies which should apply for Maariv should apply for Sfirat HaOmer as well. So if we're makel, but since you have a fixed time that, of course, you're all going to come now to 9:30 Maariv, and that's your fixed 9:30 Maariv, so then same thing is true for Sfira, because Sfira they will count during late Maariv. And therefore, if you have a fixed Maariv, which is late, and they're obviously going to count Sfira, then there's no prohibition to eat, to do stuff earlier in the evening, because the same way that it works for fixed Maariv, it will also work for Sfirat HaOmer. But Moshe Feinstein writes that in the Tshuva. And therefore, even when it comes to Sfirat HaOmer, if you go to a fixed minyan later, and they're going to count Omer there, then there's no concern about you eating or doing anything earlier in the evening. So that's a bit of applying to Inyanedu Yoma, as they say. Okay, so that's with that, I think we've concluded finally the section about Kova Minyanim, davening on one's own, and everything therein. We now come to the next chapter, where we're page 120, 122, or 23 actually opens up. We're going to discuss Hilchot Kriyat Shema. Okay, so we discussed various parts of Tefillah, we discussed Birkat Torah, Birkat Shachar, and now we're on to Kriyat Shema. So actually starting practically on page 123. First, we're going to actually look at the nature of the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. Is it D'oraita or is it D'Rabbanan? And you guys are going to look at me talking about, what are you talking about? Of course it's D'oraita. Ha'onam, is that true? We will see there is an opinion in the Rishonim that Kriyat Shema is D'Rabbanan. And that we're going to look at now. So obviously we know the Psukim, as we say, we know very well in source 1 on page 123. From the first paragraph of Shema, say as follows: that these dvarim, these words which I command you today, shall be on your heart. You teach them to your children, and speak of them. So clearly the Psukim talk about speaking of those words in the morning and at night. The question is, though, what are hadvarim ha'ele? What are these words? Are these words Kriyat Shema? Or is it just in general Divrei Torah, which is really the context of what's being spoken about there? So that is the question. What is it being spoken about here in the Et Hanan when it talks about Hadvarim Ha'ele, these words? And that's really what it all begins with. Are Hadvarim Ha'ele literally the paragraphs of Shema, or are we referring to just general Divrei Torah? So the Mishnah in the Sechet Brachot, in source 2, brings the Machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel as to understanding what Uveshoch B'cha Uvkumech actually means. You've got to say this when you go to bed and when you wake up. So Beit Shammai takes it literally, whereas Beit Hillel takes it figuratively. In source 2, the Mishnah tells us as follows: Beit Shammai, Omri Beit Shammai say, Be'erev, at night, in the evening, Kol Adam Yatu V'ikru'u, Uvaboker Ya'amdu. That at night you have to lie down to say Kriyat Shema, Uvaboker Ya'amdu. And in the morning when you say Kriyat Shema, you have to stand up. Shinamar, it says, Uveshoch B'cha Uvkumecha. So Beit Hillel Beit Shammai, understand it literally. V'shoftecha means you have to lie down when you say it at night. Uvkumecha means you have to stand up when you say Kriyat Shema in the morning. That's what Beit Shammai holds. But Beit Hillel, whereas Beit Hillel say no, it doesn't mean literally. Rather, Kol Adam Korek Darko. Each person should read it in their normal way. Shinamar, it says Uvalech Chavaderech, right? It says when you go on the journey, meaning in the normal manner. Imken, if that's the case, Lama Ne'amar of Shachov Kamecha. Why, according to Beit Hillel, does it say when you lie down, when you wake up, when you stand up? It doesn't mean literally in those positions, say Beit Hillel. Rather, it means what? It means in that time of day. The time when people lie down, i.e. nighttime. And the time when people rise up, i.e. the morning. So Beit Hillel doesn't understand that to be literally you have to lie down and stand up like Beit Shammai do. Rather, it means the time of day. That's the Machloket Tanaim in the Mishnah, in Brachot. Either way, what do they both seem to concede, though? That the Psukim are clearly talking about Kriyat Shema. Right? So Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel both seem to be agreed that we're talking here about the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema and learning it out from the Psukim. And this seems to be explicit in the Gemara in Sotah as well, in source 3. Kriyat Shema Minala. How do we know? So right, I forgot to tell you the context there of Sotah Lamed Bet. So the Mishnah there, Lamed Bet Amud Aleph, discusses the parak begins. These are the mitzvah which can be said in any language, and among those it counts Kriyat Shema can be recited in any language. It's Machloket Tanaim, but as we're going to see now, but the Mishnah in Sotah Lamed Bet Amud Aleph counts Kriyat Shema, something which can be recited in any language. So the Gemara there in Amud Bet, which is what we're looking at in source 3, says Kriyat Shema Minala. How do we know that Kriyat Shema can be recited in any language? Dichtiv, because it says in the pasuk, Shema Yisrael, hear Israel. Says the Gemara, B'chol lashon she'ka shomer, in whatever language you hear. In other words, whatever language you understand. Tan Rabbanan, but it's actually Machloket Tanaim. We learn in the Braita. Kriyat Shema kichtava divrei Rebbe. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi holds that Kriyat Shema has to be kichtava, as it's written, i.e. only in Hebrew. The Chachamim Omrim, it's the Chachamim who disagree with Rabbi, and they say B'chol lashon, in any language. My time with the Rebbe, what's the reason that Rebbe says it has to be only in Hebrew? Says Rebbe, because Amakra, because the pasuk says, V'hayu, they shall be. V'havayatanyahu, they shall be as they are in their current state. In other words, v'hayu, these words shall be, laissez-faire, right? Leave them as they are in the Hebrew that they were given. Rabbanan, what about the Chachamim? Makra, the pasuk says Shema, hear. In whatever language you hear. In other words, whatever language you understand. So the Chachamim hold that Kriyat Shema can be read in any language, whereas Rebbe says it has to be in Hebrew. Either way, what are they both doing? Both the Chachamim and Rebbe the Hanasi are both learning out from Psukim about Shema Yisrael and darshaning Psukim from the Torah to talk about the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. So Lechora, the whole thing seems to be deraita, which is what we usually assume. What's the issue? The Gemara in Brachot, Kaf Aleph, of source 4, brings a machloket, or seems to be a machloket, regarding the nature of what Kriyat Shema is. Is it deraita or is it Rabbanan? The Gemara there deals with what somebody's uncertain, they're not sure, if you can't remember if you've actually recited Shema yet or not, what do you do? That's the context there. So why is that important? Because if it's a Safek Deraita, we're machmir, we do it again. If it's a Safek Drabanan Laka, we're usually lenient. So this is exactly the context in source 4. So let's see the Gemara in Brachot in source 4. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, Safek Kara Kriyat Shema, Safek Lo Kara. If a person's in doubt, they can't remember as to whether they already did Kriyat Shema, Eino Choseh V'Korah, you don't have to recite it again. Safek Amar Emet V'Yatziv, if a person is unsure if they said Emet V'Yatziv, i.e. the bracha after Kriyat Shema, Safek Lo Amar, they're not sure if they said it or not. Choser Omer Emet V'Yatziv. You have to say it again. My time, what's the reason? Kriyat Shema Derabanan, Emet V'Yatziv Deraita. Whereas Kriyat Shema is only Derabanan according to Shmuel. Emet V'Yatziv, the bracha after Kriyat Shema, we actually remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? We talk about Yetziat Mitzrayim. Gal Yisrael is Deraita. So we have here explicitly in the Gemara, according to Shmuel, Kriyat Shema is Derabanan. Yes, Manny.
No. I was just supporting you. I said Gula. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, Manny. Oh. Sorry. Yeah.
If Kriyat Shema is Derabanan, the MS V'Yatziv refers to what? How can that be the right? What is V'Yatziv?
So the MS V'Yatziv is right, the mitzvah deraita of Zeicha Yetziat Mitzrayim. The man is God Yom Teis Chamesh Raim Kol Yimei Chayecha.
You can say the same about the third paragraph.
But doesn't MS V'Yatziv refer to the Shema?
No, it refers to the bracha immediately after Shema.
So why don't we start off with the bracha and then say about the bracha that's MS V'Yatziv as the deraisa?
I'm confused. The MS V'Yatziv is the start of the bracha. The bracha shalacha Kriyat Shema.
It doesn't MS V'Yatziv refer to the Kriyat Shema? That the Kriyat Shema.
Well, the MS V'Yatziv davar hazeh leolam ba'el. The question is, what is davar hazeh? Davar hazeh means it's Yetziat Mitzrayim, which you mentioned in the very last paragraph.
That's right. So that's MS V'Yatziv, isn't it?
I mean, it talks about the same thing, but the point is that the Kriyat Shema itself is the Rabbana, whereas the actual commemoration is, according to this Daya, according to Shmuel, is in Gal Yisrael, is in the Bracha. That's what he's saying.
So I was going to say the third paragraph of the Shema.
Shall I say that again?
The third paragraph of the Shema does reference Yetziat Mitzrayim. So the third paragraph.
So what both Peter and Manny are asking is, what about the third paragraph? Oh. So it could be that the third paragraph is a kiyum of the mitzvah deraita of Zeicha Yetziat Mitzrayim, but not a kiyum in the mitzvah deraita of Kriyat Shema. An independent mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, it might not be deraisa. Only the mitzvah of Zeicha Yetziat Mitzrayim is deraita. That's what we're getting.
But then if you weren't sure if you said the third paragraph of Shema, then
well, if you weren't sure if you said the third paragraph of Shema, then they get into good loftus. But if it's all about Yetziat Mitzrayim, then maybe you're anyway with MS V'Yatziv. But that's the point here, that the independent mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, independent of Zeicha Yetziat Mitzrayim, according to Shmuel, is holy D'Rabbanan.
I remember Rabbi Beryl Wines talks, one of the, it's probably something from the Gemara, but he's talking about one of the students discussing what their rebbes do and how sometimes they're learning right through. But my rebbe, around this time, he always mentions going out of Egypt. It somehow gets into the talk, into the lecture. So he's fulfilling the mitzvah. That's you probably quote the source, but
yeah. Right. Okay. So we have here, that's the opinion of Shmuel in the Gemara. The Kriyat Shema itself is the Rabbanan, even if Mitzvah Zeichet and Mitzrayim is Deraita. The halfway through source 4, this is challenged. Rabbi Yosef challenged it. Massive Rabbi Yosef challenged it. It says, Uvashach b'cha uvkomecha. Surely the Torah says explicitly V'shach b'komecha, which seems to refer to Kriyat Shema. Amalei Abai responds to him in defense of Shmuel, Hahu b'divrei Torah k'tiv. That's not referring to the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. That's all Rabbanan. Rather, what would Shmuel say? That the pasuk Uvshach b'komecha, you should do it morning and night, is referring to learning Torah. Because that goes back to the original question we discussed. What are hadvarim ha'eleh? So according to Shmuel, V'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh is referring to learning Torah morning and night, not a mitzvah called Kriyat Shema. But everyone agrees, as we know. We saw the other sources, and now Rabbi Elazar says, Safek kara Kriyat Shema, Safek lo kara. If you're unsure if you've done Kriyat Shema or not, Chol v'kara Kriyat Shema, you should reread Kriyat Shema. Whereas Safek hit palel, Safek lo hit palel, it's of Safek whether you davened or not, Eino chozer mit palel. You should not read them. So Rabbi Elazar disagrees, basically. Rabbi Elazar says that you do repeat, because he seems to say, like what was implied in the Mishnah, Beit Shammai Beit Hillel, that we just saw before, that it's all D'oraita, whereas Shmuel holds it's D'Rabbanan. So, right, if we look at Rashi in source 5, why is it according to Rabbi Elazar? If you're not sure, you have to reread it. Source 5, Rashi says, because he holds Kriyat Shema D'oraita. Kriyat Shema is D'oraita. Right, so based on what we've seen, it seems that according to most people, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel all seems to be D'oraita. The issue is we have one Amora by the name of Shmuel who says what? That it's D'Rabbanan. So Tosfot discussed this issue because you have Shmuel on the one hand, it's over the page, it's all 6 on page 126. Because we discussed this issue, which is what? That Shmuel holds it's D'Rabbanan. Shmuel's an Amora, right? He seems to go blatantly against the Mishnah, where we agreed that both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel seem to concede that it's D'oraita. Right, so Shmuel seems to be cholek on the Tanaim, right? That's the question that Tosfot asked here in source 6. So they say Tamer is astonishing, it's difficult. The Hachamash here it implied this is talking about what we saw in the Gemara and Sota, that Rebbe and Chachamim argued as to which language you can recite Shemaim. The Bain Rebbe, both Rebbe, Bain Rabbanan and Chacham, and Itlu, everyone agrees that Kriyat Shema D'oraita. Right? We saw in Sota, everyone seems to agree that Kriyat Shema is D'oraita. V'chein tonight, to the Pligi Hatam, b'korek Shema, v'lo Shmila Ozna, and also elsewhere. V'chein, and similarly as we saw elsewhere in Brachot, Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, Hatam Perek Kamet, the first Perek of Brachot, as we've seen, had said what? They had a machlok as to whether it means literally you have to lie down for Shema, or if it means the time you lie down. If I just skip there, to the end of the first paragraph of source 6. Alma, we see from here, the Tarvayu sphere, who the both sides hold, the Kram Mishtay, the Kriyat Shema, that the pasuk of Hadvarim Ha'ela is talking about what? He's talking about Kriyat Shema. Yet, with a parak Mishameto, in the third parak of Brachot, Amma Shmuel says, Safek Kara Kriyat Shema, Safek Lo Kara. If a person is in doubt as to whether or not they've said Shema, Eino Choz of a Kara, you're not sure. Whereas Safek Amma V'yatziv Safek Lo Amar, if you're not sure if you've recited Emet V'yatziv, Choz Amar, you do repeat. My time, what's the reason? Kriyat Shema Midrabanan. So Tosfot raised the issue that we've seen, which is that Shmuel seems to be going against the sources, right? Against the other Tanaim. Shmuel's an Amora, and he's been cholek on all the Tanaim. Both Rebbe, Yehuda Hanassi, and the Chachamim, and also Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. And he seems to be a Dat Yachid, an individual, a lone opinion in saying that Kriyat Shema is D'Rabbanan. And how can he say that in direct contradiction of all these Tanaim in the Mishnah? Okay? Tosfot don't really offer us an answer here, and they leave things to Tzarech Iyun in that source. They don't answer it. However, Tosfot in Menachot say something different. Menachot, remember, is the sugyas in Menachot, which tries for dealing with the Korban Mincha. Menachot also is where we learn a lot of Hilchot Tzitzit from. In Menachot, in source 7. And the Gemara in source 7, in Menachot, tells us the following about Tzitzit, which is to do with Shema, right? And the connection between the mitzvah of Tzitzit and the mitzvah of Shema, which we discussed previously when we learned Hilchot Tzitzit. So we look at source 7. What does the Gemara Menachot say? The Tanya, we learn in a Braita, Uri'item oto uzchartem. You should look at it and remember. Ra'ei mitzvah zo. Look at this mitzvah, says the Gemara, i.e. look at the mitzvah of tzitzit. Uzchar mitzvah acheret kasluya bo. And remember another mitzvah which is dependent upon it. Ve'ezo zo. Which mitzvah is that? Zo kriyat shema. That's mitzvah of kriyat shema. Ditnan, as we learn in the Mishnah, me'ematai karin shema b'shacharit. From which time can you read Shema in the morning? Remember, mishayakir bein techelet lelavan. But when you can distinguish between the blue on your tzitzit to the white on your tzitzit, right? That's what we'd seen when we learned Hilchot tzitzit. So we see from there that they're inherently connected, the mitzvah of tzitzit and the mitzvah of kriyat shema. By the by, what do we see from here in this Gemara Menachot? That the mitzvah of tzitzit, which obviously mitzvah d'oraita, is fused together with the mitzvah of kriyat shema, right? So that would imply kriyat shema is d'oraita, except Tosfot come along there in Menachot in source 8 and muddle things up for us. What does Tosfot there say in source 8 in Menachot? What is this? Mitzvah of kriyat shema. The mitzvah of kriyat shema. Says Tosfot in source 8, asmachta ba'alma. It's just an asmachta. The kriyat shema d'Rabbanan. Because really kriyat shema is d'Rabbanan. So Tosfot here calling it an asmachta. Asmachta literally means a support or a leaning. It means that when the pasuk says Uri'item oton, the Gemara says this refers to kriyat shema, it's what we call an asmachta. It's a support, it's a hint. It doesn't literally mean it's d'oraita. In other words, it's not only Shmuel, but Tosfot have now said in source 8, and they've pasken like Shmuel, but what? That kriyat shema is d'Rabbanan. So we've seen here, not only is it Shmuel, there's an opinion in the Rishonim, namely that of Tosfot in Menachot, that kriyat shema is d'Rabbanan. Shitta of Tosfos in Menachot. Mefurish, we've just seen it inside explicitly in source 8.
That Menachot is difficult also because it says, so it's trying to make this connection between kriyat shema and tzitzit, and it says, but you don't have to say that because it says in the words, it says what you have to remember. It says and call mitzvot, and it says nothing to do with Shema.
Good.
Why do you have to make something up?
But you're supporting Tosfot, really.
Yeah.
You're saying Tosfot clearly say, well, you're supposed to take the Gemara not literally. Because anyway, of course, Shat is referring to something else.
Yeah.
So Tosfot, you're just supporting Tosfot. But nonetheless, Tosfot go with this. So they paskin like Shmuel here. So even though Tosfot we saw earlier in Sota, they don't conclude. Tosfot and Menachot do conclude that it's d'Rabbanan. Kriyat Shema is d'Rabbanan. And again, the halacha follows Shmuel against Rabbi Elazar in the Gemara. The question is, do they wholly reject the idea of kriyat shema or not? So Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah in source 9 try to say that basically Tosfot don't basically totally rule out the idea of some recital at morning and night. They just say it's not what we call kriyat shema. Rather, it just means that you're supposed to learn some Torah and morning and night, right? That basically, according to Tosfot, mid'oraita, there's a mitzvah of you had the varim ha'eleh to learn Torah and morning and night. This is Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah in source 9. So it's called Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah because Rabbeinu Yonah's commentary on Brachot wasn't actually written by him. It was written by his students, right? The students wrote it. It was like notes from his shir. So that's what's called Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah. The students of Rabbeinu Yonah in his commentary on Masechet Brachot. So if we see in source 9, what does he say? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says named Shmuel, as we saw in the Gemara. Safek kar kriyat shema, safek lo kara. If a person is unsure whether they read Shema or not, eino chos v'kora. According to Shmuel, you don't repeat it. Why? To Sir Eli Shmuel, because as we saw, what does Shmuel hold? The kriyat shema d'Rabbanan. Kriyat shema d'Rabbanan. V'afa pisha katuv b'Torah u'shachvat kumecha. What about the fact it says explicitly in the Torah when you wake up, when you lie down, you wake up? Sir Eli Shmuel, Shmuel must hold shelo amra Torah dafka kriyat shema. You can any learning, you can read anywhere from the Torah. Whereas our choice to read specifically the paragraphs of what we call kriyat shema, that is d'Rabbanan. And therefore, and that's why you don't repeat it. In other words, what do we see? We see that
it's a derivative to learn something.
It's a derivative to learn something, some Torah. Specifically, these 3 paragraphs. That you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Rambam's shita of Tefillah. Rambam's shita in Tefillah is there's a mitzvah deraita to daven every day. Midrabanan, Chazal said daven 3 times a day, and these are the tefillot you do. But midoraita, it's just a general. Thing. There is a minyan at 9:30. There's Hashem. Somebody just asked me. So yes, there will be a minyan at 9:30. Okay, we're back in business. Pesach is over. Okay. Okay, yes. Okay, great. Okay, so that's how Talmidei Rebbeinu understand it, but Tosfos explicitly hold that. That they're supposed to read it every day. Okay, and the Chasam Sofer says the same thing as source 10. I'll skip it just due to time, but Chasam Sofer says the same thing that we just saw in Talmidei Rebbeinu, that according to Shmuel, there's a mitzvah every day to read. You're supposed to relearn Torah day and night. That is the writer. Chazal are the ones who came and said, what is it that you read? It's Shema. But we know that Tosfos is not the majority opinion, and the Rif, right, we look at source 11, the Rif says Mefurash, and the majority of Rishonim, that obviously Kriyat Shema is in fact the writer. If we look at source 11, what does the Rif say? For late Hilchak Shmuel, the halacha is not like Shmuel. The Amar Kriyat Shema Rabbanan, who says it's Rabbanan. The Kai Malam, because we hold Kriyat Shema the writer. The Kriyat Shema is obviously a Torah obligation, and that's how the Rif paskins, and not only the Rif, but it's also the Rambam and everyone else, right? The Rambam counts as the 10th positive mitzvah. We look at source 12, the Rambam in his Sefer HaMitzvot counts as the 10th positive mitzvah is the mitzvah Kriyat Shema. Right, unlike the Bahag in his Sefer HaMitzvot, the Bahag Gedolot, the Bahag counts, did you know this? The Bahag counts mitzvah Rabbanan 613. The Rambam in his count 613 will only count mitzvah D'oraita. For example, the Bahag counts Hallel as a mitzvah, and the Rambam attacks the Bahag because the Rambam says Hallel's Rabbanan can't be one of the 613. So yeah, and then Ramban in his Hasagot argues with the Rambam, says no, even Hallel sometimes D'oraita in certain circumstances, which I won't go into now. But that's what the Rambam says. Ramban says so Rambam, when he counts 613 is only mitzvah D'oraita. So if we look at source 12, he counts it as a mitzvah D'oraita in source 12. The 10th positive mitzvah he is the gods command us to recite Kriyat Shema every day, night and morning. And this is why it says the halachot of this already clarified in tractate Brachot. And there it says on Daf Kaf Aleph, the Kriyat Shema is in fact D'oraita. So that is important, and that is the opinion of Rambam. So Rif and Rambam and most Rishonim against this Tosfos and Menachot hold that Kriyat Shema is D'oraita. And the Shulchan Aruch therefore rules that if a person forgets, if I was unsure as to whether they said Shema, they have to repeat it, like the opinion of Rabbi Elazar in the Gemara against Shmuel. So if we look at source 13, that's what the Shulchan Aruch rules. Safek im kara Kriyat Shema. If a person is unsure whether they actually said Shema, you should reread it. And he also has to say the bracha before and after. If you know that you've read it, but doesn't remember if they said the brachas before and afterwards, you don't repeat it. And that is based on a machloket there in the Gemara brachot as to whether emet v'yatziv is D'oraita or D'Rabbanan or not. Because we saw the opinion report says D'oraita, but those are disagree. So we see from there that right, you should repeat it. Okay, why do you repeat it? Because it's D'oraita, as the Mishnah Berurah clarifies for us in the next source, in source 14. Why is it the Shulchan Aruch passes this way? Because we follow the majority opinion. Kriyat Shema is D'oraita. Source 14 says the Mishnah Berurah, Chos v'Korah, if you're unsure, if you're ready, you must repeat it. Hatam, the reason is, says the Mishnah Berurah, the Kai Malam, because we paskin the Kriyat Shema D'oraita. Klomar, that is to say, that which is written in the Torah, Kai apar shazo gufa. It's not referring to some generic Torah learning once at night, once in the morning. It's talking specifically about this very parsha. You must recite this paragraph of Shema when you go to bed at night and in the morning. But if fikach, and therefore, if a person is in doubt as to whether they've read it or not, you must repeat it. Okay, like everyone. Okay. Question arises that we saw this was really a machloket in the Gemara between Shmuel and Rabbi Elazar. What does the Rosh say? I think the Rosh says the same. I'm not sure what the Rosh and Menachos says. I'm not sure what there is. Well, it's only one opinion in one Tosfot, in one Masechet.
Okay.
So yeah. But okay, so the question is, okay, but at the end of the day, Shmuel against Rabbi Elazar in the Gemara. So why isn't it that we ruled like Shmuel? Why don't we rule like Shmuel? Tosfot's argument was we should follow Shmuel because he's the Rebbe of Rabbi Elazar. The Shmuel's one who says Rabbanan, so why don't we pass him like him? So the Kesef Mishneh, also known as Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the Beit Yosef, Shulchan Aruch, right? His is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, on the Rambam called Kesef Mishneh. He says that even though the halacha Shmuel is the Rebbe of Rabbi Elazar, we follow Rabbi Elazar here because all the other sugyot clearly imply that what the halacha is not like Shmuel. Shmuel is clearly on his own, even if he is the rabbi or the teacher of Rabbi Elazar. This is what he explains in source 15. Right? There you go, the Rosh. There you go. But it's source 15. The riff in the Rosh, right? The halacha is not like Shmuel. Who said that Kriyat Shema is only D'Rabbanan. To Kaimalan Kriyat Shema D'Oraita, because we passed in that Kriyat Shema is D'Oraita. When you're alien, it seems to me, says the Kesef Mishnah, the Nafgale, we learn this out. Made the Ashkechan Kama Brightot, because there are several Brightot, the Daini Dine Kriyat Shema Mikrai, which learn out the rules of Kriyat Shema from the Psukim. Umashma Derayat Gemurot. That seems to imply that they are absolute proofs, right? Shmuel is the difficult one. Shmuel is the minority opinion. We saw Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, Chachamim, Rebbe, Yehuda Anasi. Shmuel is the difficult one. And therefore, it's not just we're following Rabbi Elazar against Shmuel. We're following everyone against Shmuel. And that's why it's okay to pass it this way. Shagat Aryeh gives a different suggestion. And he says it's not just because we're not passing against Shmuel like his student. Because it's not Shmuel versus Rabbi Elazar. Rav, elsewhere, seems to say also that it is D'Oraita. And halacha in Rav and Shmuel, the halacha is that we follow Rav, but Isurei. Okay? So if we look in source 16, it's what the Shagat Aryeh says.
And also, even in the original Gemara,
Yeah.
so it has this thing that there's apparently some dispute about the Girsa, whether it really is Shmuel.
Right, excellent. So it does say I'm a Rav Yehuda, I'm a Shmuel's in brackets. Maybe it was just Rav Yehuda who is a student of Shmuel and a contemporary of Rabbi Elazar, and therefore the whole thing's okay. But assuming that Girsa is like Shmuel, then either way, Shagas Aryeh is arguing in source 16, as we're going to see now, that it's not even Shmuel versus Rabbi Elazar or everyone. It's Shmuel also versus Rav, because Rav elsewhere in Shas seems to imply that it's D'Oraisa, and we follow Rav against Shmuel with Isurei. With non-monetary matters, we follow Rav against Shmuel, and that's why we say it's D'Oraisa.
Can I just ask you?
Yeah.
It's established that you say the Shema when you rise and when you rise up and when you lie down, which would suggest when you wake up and when you go to sleep. But there's nothing that you've said so far which suggests that the Shema needs to be part of the morning tefillah.
So we have a separate halacha called Smichat Geula L'Tefillah, that tefillah must be juxtaposed to Geula, that redemption must be juxtaposed to prayer. So that's a separate requirement, which is that we want to daven,
which would make that reading of the Shema during tefillah D'Rabbanan rather than D'Oraita.
Well, no. I mean, the mitzvah is still D'Oraita, but the requirement to do it adjacent to tefillah, to Amida, is D'Rabbanan. So there's the reason we incorporate it in tefillah is because there's a halachic requirement to Midrabanan. There's a mitzvah D'Oraita to do tefillah, to do Amida, to do Kriyat Shema, but there's a mitzvah D'Rabbanan to juxtapose it, to put it adjacent to Amida. Two separate things. There's independent mitzvahs. Chazal said you're supposed to say it with tefillah. That's why we do it right before Kriyat Shema. And right before Amida, sorry. Okay, so let's just see the Shagat Aryeh, and then we've got to end because we've got to go to Ma'ariv. If we look at source 16, the Shagas Aryeh, so he gives us different reason. He says, "V'chein paskul rova poskim zal." Most poskim rule the way that Kriyat Shema is D'Oraita. V'lo bi'iru divrei ham. They never actually explained. Amai lo kaima lang Shmuel. Why don't we paskin like Shmuel, the Amar, who says Kriyat Shema D'Rabbanan, right? And surely we should follow him. But Adrab, on the contrary, it's svara logically, higher nir'eh would seem to kaima like Shmuel lagabe Rabbi Elazar. We should follow Shmuel against Rabbi Elazar. To have a katalmid lagabe Shmuel, Rabbi Elazar is like a student of Shmuel. So why don't we follow him? The question is why not? Let's skip to the next paragraph there because of the HaKesef, right? So he rejects the first reason we saw above of the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah above had said what? It's not Rabbi Elazar versus Shmuel. It's all the Brightot versus Shmuel, right? The Brightot will seem to imply that with the writer, right? He doesn't like that answer. He says, "Kesef Mishnah kata for perek bet mehilchot kriyat shema." He wrote what he wrote. Ve'ein b'dvarav tam. That doesn't make sense. V'chein nitchakem yoter mishmuel devada yada kol hani Brightot. Shmuel knew these Brightot existed, and he would have explained them away, that they were asmachtot, that they were just supports, but they weren't literal deoraitas. So why is it that we think we know the Brightos better than Shmuel? Aval nireli, it seems to me, the rayat apostle the kriyat shema deoraita mehada amrinan ba'ota sugya. It might be what's the proof against Shmuel, because we say in that very same sugya, mativ Rav Yosef, that Rav Yosef asked a kasha on him, or mishachav kumecha, and Amalei and Abai had said, hahu b'divrei Torah kativ. That's referring only to divrei Torah, but there's no actual requirement to say kriyat shema min haTorah. Uba perek kama de nadarim, and in the first perek of nadarim, Amrinam we say, Amar Rav Gidl Amar Rav, that Rav Gidl said in the name of Rav, ha'omer ashkim ve'eshneh, somebody who says that I am going to get up and I'm going to learn perek zeh eshneh b'sechet zo, or I'm going to learn this perek or this b'sechta. Neder gadol, he's made a great neder. Neder gadol nadar le'elokei Yisrael. He's made a great neder to Hashem. Uparich, and the Gemara says, "V'halo mushpa ba'ometu ve'ein shvua chalal shvua." He's already got an obligation to say kriyat shema, right? I mean, he has an obligation, says the Gemara. So you can't make another neder. You can't make a vow on something you already have. You already have an obligation to pray kriyat shema. So it shouldn't. His oath shouldn't work. Shouldn't take effect. My Kamash, what's it coming to say? That filus ruzi ba'alma hainu de Rav Gidl kamaita b'shani, and the Gemara there says, "Al Kamash when it comes to teach us, kivan since the ibai, if you wanted, pader nafshe bekriyat shema shachrit va'arvit, since a person could have learned Torah by just saying kriyat shema morning and evening with shumhachi, because of this, chal shvua aleh, it takes effect. In other words, the Gemara in the Nadarim says that if one wanted, one could have just said kriyat shema and fulfilled the obligation of learning Torah. Midoraita. Says the Shagas Arei, what do you see from there? That there's an obligation midoraita and it takes effect through kriyat shema. In other words, this is the opinion of Rav there in the Gemara. And the final there on the top of page 131 in the bold, the kivan de Rav Svirulek Rabbi Elazar says Rav holds that Rabbi Elazar the kriyat shema deoraita havele Shmuel yichida legabe. Shmuel is like a lone opinion because you've got Rav and Rabbi Elazar versus Shmuel, and that is why Shagas Arei says we pass in that way. We pass in that way that kriyat shema is deoraita. We will next week, please God, continue, and we will discuss next week which paragraph specifically are deoraita, which is a big machloket, and now we've got to go off to Mariv and do the mitzvah deoraita of kriyat shema. So we will be going to years man kriyat shema shel arvit. So I will see you all next week. Lehitraot. Take care.